Nico Mannion has been in the spotlight since his early years of high school, and the expectation for him was always the NBA. After a solid freshman season at Arizona, Nico Mannion is now projected to be a first-round pick in this year's NBA draft. So in today's video, we'll talk about Nico Mannion and how good he will be in the NBA. Let's get right into it. If you have not already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It goes a long way in showing your support, and I just really appreciate it a lot. But anyways, getting right into things, like I said before, Nico Mannion has been a superstar since he entered high school. He's been all over Ball is Life, Baller Visions, Overtime, you name it. Any YouTube channel that puts out mixtapes, Nico Mannion has been on those channels, and for good reason. He is an elite, explosive, scoring point guard. He's just an exciting player to watch. He has the jump shot, he has the athleticism, he can do a little bit of everything. So expectations and hype around him going into his freshman season at Arizona were very high. And for the most part, Nico Mannion did live up to most of the expectations that people had for him at the Division I level. But his season at Arizona did expose some of the flaws in his game and why some NBA scouts are uncertain whether or not they want him on their team or how high his potential actually is. However, even though some of his flaws were exposed this year at Arizona, it doesn't mean that these are unfixable. He can definitely improve upon these things and get rid of some of the bad habits that he had. And also, he showed off a very impressive skill set, so I'm sure that many NBA scouts will be willing to overlook some of these flaws and work with him to improve them because of the impressive skill set that he showed. For the season, he averaged 14 points per game, 2.5 rebounds per game, 5.3 assists per game on 39.2% shooting from the field. So, pretty solid numbers and very impressive for a freshman point guard in a good basketball conference like the Pac-12 is. But obviously that 39.2% shooting from the field is definitely something to be concerned about, and it's definitely something that he will need to improve upon. He definitely needs to get better decision making, better shot selection, and just overall make more of his shots than 39%. In my opinion, Nico Mannion has a very good all-around game on offense, being he's a good shooter, he's a good slasher, he's good at ball handling, he's good at passing, he's just all-around solid at everything, and like I said before, he has very good athleticism at the point guard position. So on the offensive end, there are really very few weaknesses for Nico Mannion. He has a lot of strengths. I like his catch and shoot. Overall, his jump shot is just very smooth. I like the way he shoots, and I think that that will be a big strength of his at the next level. He also has a very nice floater, which I think he is going to need to improve upon and really master if he wants to be an effective scorer at the next level. But like I said, he already has a very good floater. That is one of the strengths of his game in my opinion. He's also very, very good in transition. I like the way he pushes the ball, whether it's pushing and scoring or pushing and finding his teammates. In transition, I think that Nico Mannion is at his best, and one of the more underrated aspects of his game in my opinion, and what I like most about him, is his off-ball movement. We all know that the greatest shooters in the NBA right now, being Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, are great at moving off the ball, and I see this type of off-ball movement from Nico Mannion. So I'm not saying that he could be as good of a shooter as Steph Curry, or that he will be as good of a shooter as Steph Curry, but the way that he moves off the ball and the fact that he already has a pretty good jump shot, especially from the three-point line, could be very promising, and it is promising to me personally. So obviously there's a lot to like about Nico Mannion's game, but like I said before, a lot of his weaknesses and his flaws were exposed this season, and some of those weaknesses were his decision making and shot selection. Really, those two things, he had a lot of unnecessary turnovers and a lot of unnecessary shots just because of really simply bad decision making. So obviously that comes with maturity, and you expect this out of freshman point guards, but to be an elite point guard in the NBA, he's definitely going to need to improve this, and he's going to need to improve it fast if he wants to get playing time right away. Another thing is maturity, and that kind of goes along with decision making and shot selection. You could just see the inexperience on the court a lot of the time, but like I said, he's a freshman point guard. You expect this out of these type of guys, so it's not a long-term issue that I'm concerned about. Another thing is consistency. At times he was very streaky, and this contributed to his very low field goal percentage. You know, he was either very, very hot or he was non-existent. There were many games where he just got completely taken out of it, or one half he was hot and one half he just completely disappeared. So that is something that I need him to improve on if I want to have confidence in him as a prospect. Looking at it from a GM's perspective. Another thing is defense and size. These kind of go along together because at the NBA level, there are so many big athletic point guards, and point guards in the NBA are only getting bigger and more athletic. Nico Mannion being 6'3", maybe 6'4", I think he's more like 6'2", 6'3". He's on the smaller end of NBA players in general, and like I said before, he has good athleticism and he has good quickness and speed for the point guard position, but his size and his strength are going to be an issue, especially on defense. So when talking about Nico Mannion, like I mentioned before, obviously most of his weaknesses are fixable. Most of his flaws are things that he can improve upon. The only really weakness or flaw about Nico Mannion that I would say he can't really control is his size. Obviously, he can get more strong, he can get in the weight room, put on some weight, but his height is always going to be 6'3", so I don't think that Nico Mannion will ever really be an elite defender, but I also think that he could get good enough on the defensive end to not be a defensive liability. So overall, his size is really the only thing that he can't control, and I really think that he really could improve in every other weakness of his game. In my opinion, the keys to success for Nico Mannion in the NBA will be consistency, especially from his jump shot. I think that he needs to get his three-point shot automatic. Obviously, that is the style of the game that we are getting into. We are getting into more of a three-point shot or layup type of scoring system for most NBA teams. The mid-range is kind of disappearing, all that type of stuff. So I really think that Nico Mannion needs to get a very consistent jump shot and just become an overall consistent scorer. Like I mentioned before, he also needs to get better decision making, and I'm sure that this will come with time and maturity, and that is going to be a huge success for him. And like I mentioned earlier, his biggest strength to me personally is his transition game. So I think that pushing it in transition and creating for his teammates as well as himself in transition is going to be huge for him at the NBA level. So I'm optimistic about Nico Mannion's chances to be a very good point guard in the NBA, just depending on the situation that he gets himself into and which team he gets drafted to. Anyways, please leave your thoughts on Nico Mannion and whether or not you think he will be a star in the NBA, or whether or not you think he'll be an average player or maybe even a bust. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.